I'm going to tell a story this week that is not a Murder Most Irish story.
It's a Mystery Most Irish.
It's a Mystery Most Irish. It's just because I think sometimes it's going to have a break.
It is. We're getting away from the human murder and we're going on to the old horsey murder.
The equine murder.
Equine murder.
So, I also think this is the most Irish crime
of all time. Yeah.
Of all crimes. And it also was handled in the most Irish way.
It's one of my favourite stories about how they didn't get somebody is the Shergar thing. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
You'll probably tell it. Go on here. It's like one of my favourite things ever. Because I think this could not be more like the Gardaí if they tried.
Okay. Oh, is this... I think so. So, Shergar was born on the 3rd of March 1978.
What was his parents' name? John and Susan.
John and Susan. Two beautiful horses that lived in the mountains of Inishmore.
They were madly in love and decided to move to the city. Sean needed to pursue his career. And Susan was like, I've had enough of this life.
They were madly in love. Susan wanted to be an artist. And Sean wanted to be an architect.
I think we've changed their names twice. Stop, it's shocking. Go on.
All of my references, by the way, are like Wikipedia and the Guardian. And then my own mind, because I think every Irish person knows everything about this story.
Is true, yeah.
So, he was born in Irish bred, British trained, thoroughbred. Ooh. After a very successful season in 1981, he was retired to Balmany Stud in Kildare, Ireland.
Very good.
Prince, I did not know this now. This is one bit. Prince Shah Karim Al Hussein, born on 13th of December 1936, known by the religious title Maulana Hazar Imam within Muslim circles and as Aga Khan, the sixth elsewhere, is the 49th and current Imam of Nizari, a denomination of Shia Islam.
That's a lot of words.
Just see me, I was trying to spell them. And then, like, a lot of the spelling was like Muslim. I was like, I can't say that. He has held his position of Imam since July of 1957, when at the age of 20 he succeeded his grandfather. Aga Khan claims to be a direct lineal descendant of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. His grandfather Aga Khan III states in his memoirs that the Shias had a need for divine guidance from the Prophet Islam's death. This need of the Shias manifested in their belief system for the institution of Inamit. So I have no idea what any of these means. I just wrote it down because then the next sentence was, Aga Khan is a big business magnate and a British and Portuguese citizenship as well as a racehorse owner and breeder. Aga Khan sent the horse for training in Britain in 1970 and 1980. Shergar began his first season of racing in September 1980 and ran 2 races that year, where he won one and came second in the other. In 1981, he ran 6 races, winning 5 of them, and in June of that year, he won the 202nd Epsom Derby by 10 lengths. Like, that's, like, really good.
Yeah.
The longest winning margin in the race's history. 3 weeks later, he won the Irish Sweep Derby 4 lengths ahead, and a month after he won the King George and Queen Elizabeth Stakes by 4 lengths. In his final race of the year, he came in 4th, and the Aga Khan took the decision to retire him in stud in Ireland. After Shergar's monumental win, the Aga Khan sold 40 shares in the horse, valuing it at £10 million.
Whoa. He
retained 6 shares himself, and he created an owner of syndicate with the remaining 34 members. So 34 other people invested into this horse. Shergar raced from 1980 to 1982, and he won a phenomenal amount of races. And as noted above, he did it in lengths ahead of other horses. He was good-natured and a well-mannered horse, and he was noted as being very easy to break in and train.
Aww.
Over late 1980 and early 1981, Shergar filled out and was stronger. So I'm just going back through his racing history here. Stout's like one of the trainers. He decided that Shergar should run in the year's Derby and planned the season accordingly. The first race to prepare him was a Guardian newspaper trial run at Sandown on the 25th of April in 1981. It was a 9-horse race and he was placed... It was a 1 1/4 mile race, so it's 20 kilometres.
Yeah.
Shergar raced his pace after a mile and won by 10 lengths.
Jesus!
Berlane had written in his column before the race that at 25-1, the odds for Shergar to win the Derby were excellent. After the win, he noted them shortening 8-1, where the bet is still worth pressing. He continued, if Shergar wins the next race at Chester or the Ladbroke Linfield trial as easily, he will be down less than 4-1. Surely this is the time to bet like men. So he was like kind of saying like the odds are just going to go against you. So even if 8-1 is low, do it because he'd be 4-1 next week.
Yeah.
While out in the gallops on 15th June, Shergar threw his rider and ran through a hedge on the road and trottled along the local village.
Good man!
He was spotted by a local resident.
He fucking dead right.
Who followed the horse until it stopped to graze on a hedge and then led him back to the stables. Shergar was unharmed during the event, and Stout recalled it's very lucky nothing happened to him as there was a crossing there and it's a difficult thing. So, following Shergar's Epsom Derby win, the group of US horse owners had offered $40 million to syndicate the horse. The Aga Khan turned down the offer and instead decided to syndicate it himself. So for $10 million, that was at £250,000 for each of the 40 shares. A record price at the time. The Aga Khan kept 6 shares himself, as I said above, and the others were sold individually to buyers from 9 countries. The shareholders had an option each year of selecting a mare to be covered or selling that option on.
Okay.
So if they had a mare themselves, they could essentially stud Shergar for their mare. The stud fees were £60,000 to £80,000.
There was so much money in horse racing.
Insane. Which meant that the shareholders could expect to have made a profit from their stud within 4 years.
That's crazy. Fucking hell.
The Aga Khan and Stout considered entering Shergar into the Prix d'Arc de Triomphe that autumn, but decided that he needed one more race to prepare. They entered him into what would be his final race, the St. Leger Stakes at Doncaster on the 12th of September in 1981, with Swinburne as the jockey. 10 days before the race, a story was published in the racing newspaper Sporting Life that Shergar had not been practicing well and had become mullish. Stout stated that the rumours were untrue and Shergar was running well in the race. Although the soft ground was not to his liking, but on the final straight, when Swinburne tried to get him to accelerate to the front, the horse would not respond, and Shergar came fourth, 11.5 lengths behind the cut above, which was the winner. So, surprised by the manner of the loss, Stout and Aga Khan ran a series of tests on Shergar, and all showed that the horse was in great health. He'd worked well in training after the race, but unwilling to risk the horse without knowing what had happened at St. Leger, the Aga Khan decided not to enter him into the Arc and instead retired him to the Ballymoney stud.
Because he just had enough, clearly.
Yeah, he ran solidly for 2 years.
Like, he just was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
He later explained to a racing journalist he was just an exceptional athlete. All through the spring and summer, he completely dominated European racing in a very dramatic manner. And after he had run so uncharacteristically in St. Leger, we knew something had gone wrong, but we didn't know what it was, so it was an easy decision to retire him before the Arc. So that was it. He was like, we're not going to race.
We're going to let him enjoy the rest of his life, basically.
Yeah. In 1982... Oh, hang on, I've skipped a bit. The Aga Khan turned down large offers to put Shergar stud in the US and instead chose to stand him in the Ballymoney stud in Ireland. He arrived in October of 1981 and was paraded down the main street of Newbridge, County Kildare.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He was one of the most recognisable sports personalities in horse or humans in Ireland.
He was, though. They were like...
Yeah, but this is...
That's fine.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay.
They were like, this horse is like...
I know, but I just think it's because there are very few Irish athletes
we don't have that much
that
we're going to cling to a horse.
Yeah, that we were like, this horse is the best thing.
This horse is a descendant of Jesus Christ.
He came down. What's the white horse? He's Tiernan Old's son.
That's it.
At the start of February 1983, Shergar's second studs... Oh yeah, so in his first stud season in 1982, he covered 44 mares.
What?
Which...
Riding everything.
Which gave him 36 foals.
Oh, you 36 babies.
17 colts and 19 fillies. How do they keep the bloodline clean in these things?
I don't know how the horses aren't coming out with like 12 legs.
At the start of February 1983, Shergar's second stud season was about to begin, and he was in high demand. He had a full book of 55 mares to cover. He was expected to earn $1 million for the season. This is during the height of the deep economic despair in Ireland. There was a recession, and that around 30% of the working population were unemployed and unable to get a job.
That's freaking crazy, and people were still pumping money into this. Like,
to this horse. So, we're getting into it now.
Let's start.
On the 8th of February 1983 at around 8:30 p.m, 3 men, all armed and wearing masks, entered the house of Jim Fitzgerald. Lads, if you want to laugh, go and look at the interviews with Jim Fitzgerald.
Oh, really?
Oh, he's a nutjob. He's the head groom at Ballymoney. They were part of a group of at least 6 and possibly up to 9 men. One of the men said to him, "We've come for Shergar. We want $2 million for him." Fitzgerald said the men were not rough, although one of them, who carried a pistol, was very aggressive. In fact, his exact words were, "He was a gangster. He was a gangster." Fitzgerald's family were locked into a room while he was taken at gunpoint out to Shergar's stable and was told to put the horse in the back of a horse box. Shergar became excitable during this point, and the men pushed him into a small horse box. After the horse box was driven away, Fitzgerald was told to lie on the floor of a van, and his face was covered with a coat. He was driven around for 4 hours before being released near the village of Kilcock, approximately 20 miles from Ballymoney. He was told not to contact the Garda Síochána, or he and his family would be killed, but to wait for the gang to contact him, and he would be given the code phrase, "King Neptune."
This is a fucking joke.
The most Irish thing ever.
Yeah.
Which the gang would use to identify themselves. The men did not say they were from the IRA or give any indication as to who they were, although one of them spoke with a Northern Irish accent and the other seemed to be experienced with horses.
Not the IRA.
Up the rat. They loved the horses. Fitzgerald walked into the next village and called his brother to pick him up. On arrival back at Ballymoney, he rang Ghislaine Dorian to inform him of the theft and urged him not to call the police because of the threats that had been made. Drian attempted to reach the Aga Khan in Switzerland to inform him, then rang Stan Cosgrove, Shergar's vet, who also was a shareholder. Cosgrove contacted a retired Irish Army Captain, Sean Berry, who was a manager of the Irish Thoroughbred Breeders Association. This is like a fucking, like 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
Berry contacted Alan Dukes, a friend of his who was the serving Minister for Finance, who suggested that Berry speak to Michael Noonan, the Minister for Justice. Noonan and the Dukes told him to call the Garda, and at this time it was 4 a.m.
Jeez, they literally went around the country trying to figure out what to do.
Drian had managed to contact the Aga Khan, who told him immediately to call the Gardaí. The force were then contacted, but at this point it's 8 hours after Shergar had been stolen. Fucking Egypts! Like
they could have tracked that van. They honestly could have
you
tracked
get
that
to
van.
Kilcock Village. There's a police station in Kilcock
They
Village.
literally could have tracked it, yeah.
Now,
but I understand him being afraid for his family. Like, I get that.
I get that too, but like he's ringing the stud.
Yeah.
So at that point, they know his family. So like at that point, the guy he contacts should be like, "Your family are fine.
Family are fine. They're here to
We'll
stay."
call the guards."
Yeah.
Now, the next bit's important. The first phone call came from the thieves was on the night Shergar was stolen. Fitzgerald was still not back at Ballymoney by that time and had not had the chance to tell the news of the theft to anyone. So they rang the stud and they told Fitzgerald that they would kill his family and not to tell anybody.
Yeah.
But like within like an hour of him being gone, they rang
Bally. How did the fuck do you think he was getting back to
the whole thing's a farce. Theft to anyone. The call was to Jeremy Maxwell, a horse trainer based in Northern Ireland. The caller demanded £40,000, although this figure was later raised to £52,000. So first they wanted $2 million.
Then
now within like an
$40,000.
hour, they ring someone in Northern Ireland to say they want 40 grand and then 52 grand. Maxwell was told that the negotiations would only be with 3 British horse racing journalists. Derek Thompson, John Oakley, and Peter Campling from The Sun. The men were told to be at the Europa Hotel in central Belfast by Thursday evening. The Europa Hotel was known as the most bombed hotel in Europe after having suffered multiple bomb attacks during the Troubles. It's a lovely hotel.
They're like, come on up there now, lads.
Yeah.
Imagine being a horse journalist and you're just living your life, and then they're like, there's some gangsters that want you to come try and save Shergar.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
There's a couple of lads from clearly the IRA.
But maybe not.
Clearly. We've got Northern Ireland accents and we want you to meet in the Europa, but we're not
affiliated with the IRA.
When the three journalists arrived at the Europa, they were contacted by phone and told to go to Maxwell's house, the coffee company owners. They were told to go to Maxwell's house to await further calls on orders from the police. Thompson kept the person talking as long as possible, but the caller rang off at 80 seconds before the call could be traced. There was a series of calls to Maxwell's house later that night, and at 1:30 a.m. Thompson managed to keep the caller talking for over 90 seconds, which would have been enough to trace the call. He was told the person who was doing the call intercepts had finished his shift at midnight and gone home.
Fucked off and they'd no one to come in.
Doesn't this sound remarkably familiar?
This is literally, I remember I listened to the Case File episode, and I never really didn't know that much about Shergar, and he was like, you could hear it in his voice that he was like, fucking Irish.
Yeah. It's the most Irish thing ever. At 7 a.m. on the 12th of February, another call was put through to Maxwell's house, which said that things had gone wrong and that Shergar was dead. Although a committee put together by the syndicate to coordinate the response later considered that this was a hoax.
And also that they rang him when things went wrong.
We've killed the horse.
The horse got a gun somehow. Self-defense. Like, what the fuck went wrong?
They're calling her like, he's got the gun! Hit the deck, lads!
Like,
Shergar, no!
What went wrong? That's this poor horse, we're shocking. Anyway, go on, sorry.
Although a committee put together for the syndicate to coordinate the response later considered that this was a hoax, Toby argues that as the call about the theft preceded Fitzgerald's return to Ballymoney, i.e. before anyone knew about the theft, and as the callers used the code phrase King Neptune in their communications, it's more likely that the calls and the ensuing focus on the high-profile activity in Belfast were undertaken to distract the authorities from what was happening to Shergar elsewhere.
Oh, okay.
So they were like...
bait and switch.
Yeah. Well, even like, give us 57 grand. Horse dead. It got out of control.
Something happened.
We don't know what happened. We came back to the house, he was having a rave. On the 9th of February, thieves opened a second line of negotiation. Contacting Ballymoney stood directly and speaking to Drion. The call, which came in at 4:05 p.m, was short. Drion was not a fluent speaker of English and struggled to understand the thick fucking Irish accent on the caller. The caller similarly had problems with Drion's heavy French pronunciation. And 90 minutes later...
90 minutes?
Yes! The caller tried again, with Drion asking him to speak slowly. A demand of £2 million was made for the return of Shergar, and a contact number in France, through which further negotiations could be made. Drion provided the number of Aga Khan's French office. The syndicate which owned Shergar brought in a risk and strategic consulting from control risks to handle the negotiations. They negotiated from the Paris office with a series of telephone calls over 4 days. On Friday the 11th of February, the negotiators demanded proof that Shergar was still alive, as there had been some speculation in the press that Shergar was dead. Well, they told some other people that he was dead.
Yeah, so that's where the speculation came from.
Yeah. The thieves said that the representative of the syndicate should go to Crofton Hotel in Dublin and ask for any messages for Johnny Logan.
What in the name of God is this fucking nonsense?
Stan Cosgrove went to the hotel and asked for messages. Armed members of the Special Detective Unit, the domestic security agency for the Garda, were present and in an undercover role. There was no messages delivered.
None for Johnny Logan? No. Grant.
He was too busy winning Eurovision. What's that song he's famous for?
No.
Yeah, I think that's it. Hold on for a minute. I need to take my cardigan off.
Okay, go for it. He's huge in Germany.
The Germans love huge in Germany. Mad dick.
Is that fact checked? Is that true?
Yes. My ginormous penis. Right. So, there was no messages delivered and Cosgrove returned home after waiting. Shortly afterwards, the negotiator received a phone call from the thieves. Angry at the presence of the police. They said, how fucking dare you?
How dare you?
And threatening that if any members of the gang were captured or killed, the negotiators and the police would be murdered in retribution.
Did none of them ask them, like, send us some proof the horse is still alive? Put him on the phone.
Yeah, put him on the phone. Put him on the phone.
And put him on the phone, not another horse, because I know the sound of it.
I know the sound of that horse. Put him on the fucking phone.
They're looking after me, I'm grand, yeah.
I'm alright. I'll send you a picture of me with the newspaper. This poor horse.
This is unusable.
No, it's not. We need a bit of laugh.
Go on.
Alright, here we go. On Saturday, the 12th of February, the thieves contacted the negotiators and said that proof had been left at the Rossnaree Hotel. When this was picked up, it contained several Polaroid pictures of a sexy horse.
Because we're not talking about people dying. This is why we're like this now.
Sorry, I thought it. Okay.
No, leave that hilarious. I'm taking that out. Absolutely leave that in.
So it showed pictures shown of Shergar. Some of the pictures showed the horse's head next to a copy of the Irish Times, which was dated. So Irish.
One of the glasses on it.
And a little paddy cap.
Oh, my stomach hurts. Go on, sorry, go on. Oh, it's the most Irish fucking shit I've ever heard in my life.
Okay. It was dated the 11th of February. Cosgrove saw the photograph and confirmed it was definitely him.
Sure.
Although he added it wasn't proof that the horse was alive at that point, and you'd want to get much more definitive evidence if you have seen the complete horse. It would have been different, but this was just a head.
They thought that
They did think that, but I've seen the photograph and it doesn't look like a decapitated horse.
It's just Shergar hanging.
Yeah, it just looks like Shergar having a
read.
Having a read of the paper. In a telephone call from the thieves to negotiators at 10:40 on the 12th of February, it was explained that the syndicate were not satisfied with the picture of the horse, which they explained did not constitute enough proof. The caller told negotiators, if you're not satisfied, that's it. And the call was ended. And the thieves never made contact again.
That was it?
Yeah. So,
poor little horsey.
The syndicate attempted to re-establish contact with the gang, but there was no response to the newspaper request to do so. Shergar's body has never been recovered or identified. Several sources, including O'Callaghan, the Sunday Telegraph and the Observer, considered it likely that the body was buried near Aughnesheehan, near Ballynamore. I don't know why they think that.
That's very
specific,
proof. Isn't it?
O'Callaghan said that as far as he knew, the remains had been buried on the farm of an IRA veteran from the 1940s, and that it would be difficult to get permission to dig on the land. Ballynamore is a town of strong republicanism, once nicknamed the Falls Roads of the South. What are you talking about? The Falls Road is literally just like the South.
Where is Ballynamore? I don't know where that is.
Leitrim.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
I never thought, sorry.
It makes a lot of sense.
Does it?
A highly Republican area throughout the Troubles. There have been several claims of equine skeletons being that of Shergar. Deslan, a specialist horse vet with a knowledge of equine pathology, has assisted the Garda in several instances where a horse's remains may have been those of Shergar. He retains some strands of hair from Shergar's mane and tail, which he says may contain sufficient DNA to confirm an identification. Police intelligence sources consider that the IRA as the most likely suspects behind the theft. Do you know there was a headline when all this happened that Muammar Gaddafi had done this?
What?
Yeah, because Muammar Gaddafi at the time was in talks to like negotiate getting arms into the country with the IRA.
Right, so they were
And
like,
you
you did this.
know, all those videos of like back in the early Muammar Gaddafi days, the training videos.
Yes.
They were all made by the IRA.
That's crazy.
And then same with like the likes of ISIS, they all were trained by the IRA.
That's nuts. So they basically said, oh, Muammar Gaddafi.
They thought Muammar Gaddafi had come over and, not him, but like someone.
The horse.
Yeah. So the public and intelligence considered the IRA the most likely suspects behind the theft. During the 1980s, the Irish Republican movement followed the Armalite and ballot box strategy, in which electoral success was chased by Sinn Féin. So they were like, we need to get into government, and to do that, obviously, we need money.
So they thought that that's what they were doing to try and sell the horse, or not sell the horse, to get the horse.
While an armed struggle was continued by the IRA, the strategy was expensive. So it required payment for arms and explosives for the IRA, and for political activity, advertising and salaries for Sinn Féin members. The annual budget of the movement was estimated between 2 million and 5 million.
So when they asked for 2 million initially, that's what they thought.
Yeah. And it was always under financial pressure.
What a bizarre way to try and get money.
Well, here's why they thought that. In October 1981, the IRA Army Council, the leadership group of the organisation, approved the kidnapping of Ben Dunn, the head of the chain of Dunn stores. Dunn was released unharmed after a week, and both the Dunn family and the Garda deny any ransom was paid, but the Irish Republican Army said that they got 300 grand out of the Dunn family.
Oh.
But the Dunn family and the Garda are like, no, that never happened.
Well, why the fuck would they have released him?
Yeah, although
they got sick of listening to him.
I think, wouldn't you get sick of listening to Ben
Dunn?
Dunn?
Like, we can't just let him go.
Do you know who's better than you? The UDD. He makes radio adverts for the UDD. They know how to kidnap people.
The IRA are shite.
Do you know what the UDD do when you've been kidnapped? According to intelligence subsequently received by the intelligence sources, and after the success of this operation, it was decided to undertake another ransom through kidnapping or theft. This time, the idea was Shergar. Oh. And I think also the IRA have like... So I think they may have released him because it's like... If they're trying to gain political gravitas...
Yeah.
And they've kidnapped someone and then murdered him...
It makes them look really, really bad.
It makes them look really, really bad.
Yeah.
If they've kidnapped him and then after a week being like, oh, for fuck's sake, get the fuck out.
Get out, Ben.
But with a horse...
But also, like, most people like animals more than humans.
Yeah, I remember this thing. This thing was fucking everywhere.
It's mad.
This is the first case where I was like, oh. In 1999, Sean O'Callaghan, a former member of the IRA who had been working within the organisation as Supergrass for the Gardaí since 1980, published his autobiography. In it, he states the plot to steal and ransom Shergar was devised by Kevin Mallon, a leading IRA member who sat on the Army Council. Mallon came up with the idea while serving time in Portlaoise prison. Mallon was put in charge of a specialist operation unit with orders to raise several £1 million, and several IRA men were taken from under O'Callaghan's control in the IRA Southern Command and put into Mallon's unit.
Right.
These included the IRA members Jerry Fitzgerald, Paul Stewart, Rob Butler and Nicky Keogh. 2 weeks after Shergar is kidnapped, Jerry Fitzgerald told O'Callaghan he'd been involved in a theft and that Shergar had been killed really early on in the process. After the horse panicked and no one present could cope with him, in the process the horse damaged its left leg and the decision was made to kill it.
Oh.
In his 1999 autobiography, O'Callaghan states that Shergar was killed within days of the theft. In an interview for RTE, the Irish broadcaster, in 2004, he stated that Jerry Fitzgerald strongly suggested that Shergar had been killed within hours of him being kidnapped.
Fuck.
And the IRA then kept up a deception that the horse was still alive in their care. Which would kind of make sense because those other guys were like, sure, if he is dead, ring these people and see if we get 50 grand out of him.
Yeah.
Kevin O'Connor, the journalist with RTE, identifies 3 parts of the gang. A section to undertake high-profile activity in Belfast to focus media attention on the north. 1 part negotiating discreetly with the Aga Khan, and 1 part guarding the horse. So there was like 3 different three different sections of them involved. According to O'Callaghan, in August 1983, in an effort to raise money that they failed to do with Shergar, Fitzgerald and his group attempted to kidnap the businessman Galen Weston at his home in County Wicklow.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
The Garda had been forewarned and took over the house while Weston was in the UK, and after a gun battle, Jerry Fitzgerald, Keogh and 3 other men were arrested.
Yeah.
So all the men he said were
actually involved in Shergar's...
were involved in this. They received long prison sentences. O'Callaghan stated that essentially the same team that went to kidnap Shergar went to kidnap Gillan Weston. Well, they didn't do a great job kidnapping a horse.
They didn't do a great job either of those times.
No.
Fucking Egypt.
Or with Ben Dunn.
No. Maybe they should have got somebody else.
If Ben Dunn did make radio adverts, he'd be absolutely correct and accurate.
He would be correct with his assumption of the Irish right.
No arrests have ever been made in relation to Shergar's theft. The IRA have never admitted any role to the theft or its aftermath. Mallon and Keogh deny any involvement in the events. Toby raises a query over O'Callaghan's story, saying the IRA informant was a confessed informer whose life depending on his ability to weave convincing web of lies. So like he was kind of saying for him to like remain like available, he needed to like weave all these lies together. So he was like, I don't know, without
he's
evidence,
actually telling the truth.
He's like, without evidence, it's just an interesting story. In 2008, a special investigation by the Sunday Telegraph obtained information from another IRA member who said that O'Callaghan had not been told the full story because the gang was so embarrassed by what happened. They said a vet that the IRA had arranged to look after Shergar did not turn up because his wife threatened to leave him if he did. Once the IRA realised that the Aga Khan was not going to pay, the Army Council ordered the horse to be released. The extensive search by the Garda hampered any release, and Mallon thought he was under close surveillance and that releasing the horse was too risky, so he ordered that it be shot and killed. The IRA source told the newspaper that 2 men went into the stable where Shergar was being held. 1 carried a machine gun. Shergar was machine gunned to death, and there was blood everywhere, and the horse even slipped on his own blood.
Oh my god.
He said there was lots of cussing and swearing because the horse wouldn't die.
These motherfuckers.
He said, you think they just shoot it in the head?
What the fuck were they doing?
Like
it's a fucking... What are you doing? It's a massive horse.
Yeah.
Idiots.
With no definitive news of Shergar's whereabouts and with the Garda limited... So this goes back to when Shergar was missing, right? And this is just the most Irish thing ever.
Go on.
So, with no definitive news of Shergar's whereabouts, and with the Gardaí limiting information, they released to the press. The media took to speculation to cover the story. Berlane observes that in reporting the case, the press speculation was remarkable for its enthusiasm and its inaccuracy over a long period. Such media claims included that Shergar had been stolen by Colonel Gaddafi as part of a deal to supply arms to the IRA, that according to the tabloid newspaper Sunday Sport, Shergar was spotted being ridden by the missing Lord Lucan, that a Middle Eastern horse breeder had stolen him from the stud, and that the mafia had undertaken the act to punish Aga Khan over a previous sale of a horse which had gone badly. Yeah, he's worth 13 billion, I think.
The mafia came to Ballyshannon there now, that's what they did.
8 weeks after Shergar was stolen, Stan Cosgrove was approached by the senior detectives within the Garda. Is this the story you were telling me about? That you were like... Yeah. Who introduced him to Dennis Minogue, a horse trainer. Minogue claimed to have contact with the IRA, who had shown him a photograph of Shergar, and that he could help get Shergar back if a ransom of 80,000 Irish pounds was paid. The Garda asked Cosgrove to assist them in a sting operation to lure the thieves out. Cosgrove agreed, and on the 20th of July 1983, Detective Garda Martin Kinnerons assisted the operation. He put the money in the boot of his car in a remote village, which Minogue was to collect once the horse had been released. The following day, Kinnerons found the boot of his car forced open and the money missing. Minogue had also disappeared and the money was never recovered.
Oh, Ireland. Jesus Mary. Like, it's literally like how the law enforcement work here is be like, will you do that? Yeah, go on. I'm not lying.
Yeah, do you know a fella?
This is, hand to God, this is the truth. Put the money in the boot of that car, yeah? Get you the horse back.
Yeah. I'll get you that horse back. No bother.
Literally what?
Listen, I know a fella that has a horse. And he's the image of Shergar.
Spitting image.
A subsequent internal Garda inquiry dismissed Camerons from the force for breaching Garda regulations. Do you think he might be in on it?
Maybe.
In an interview in 2018, he reiterated his long-stated innocence and said, when it all went wrong, everyone jumped for the high ground. They, in brackets, the senior Garda officers, all denied that they had anything to do with the ransom.
Jesus Christ.
So, some people asked why they didn't just pay the ransom.
Yeah.
And there's a really straightforward answer, is that Aga Khan, including... He wasn't the only person that owned the horse.
There were so many shares.
So there's 35 members, and he could not negotiate or pay on behalf of the others. He was unsure whether Shergar would be returned even if the money was paid. And he was concerned that if the kidnappers' demand were met, it would make a very high-value horse. It would make, like, essentially every high-valued horse in Ireland a target for future tests. The shareholders were divided on the approach. Brian Sweeney, a veteran of the American horse racing industry, he thought that, he quoted that if you ask a mother who has had a child that had been kidnapped if a ransom should be paid, I think the answer would be yes, and quickly. But another shareholder, Lord Derby, disagreed and said if ransom money is paid for this horse, then there is a danger of other horses being kidnapped in years to come.
Yeah,
and that simply could not be tolerated. Also, just as a last and final point, the horse was insured for 3.5 million. Jeez. The whole thing is just like, what?
Nonsense.
Why?
That poor horsey.
Why? Anyway, that is the story of Shergar the horse.
And how stupid Ireland is.
And how stupid Ireland was.
How we do things.
Nothing has changed. And you know what's really familiar about that story?
What?
Is 90% of the murder cases that are about, human beings end the exact same way.
Yep.
Like, the exact same way.
Poor little horsey, big horsey. Anyway, R.I.P. Shergar, because he's definitely dead now.